Hello and welcome. This is Tigrai Television coming to you live from Maqala. I'm Lalam Tejana with today's news, and here are the details. In a Twitter post earlier today, member of Tigray Central Command Getachew Reda calls recent story by AFP regarding direct engagement between the government of Tigray and Ethiopia pure fabrication. AFP published a story on Friday quoting a statement by the African Union that it is taken to mean the two parties had held direct talks. The African Union is yet to issue a statement on the matter. The government of Tigray has issued repeated statements stressing that it will not sit down for talks ahead of restoration of basic services. Global Society of Tigray Scholars and Professionals issued a statement on Thursday calling for the immediate replacement of Special Envoy, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, following his call for the state of Eritrea to join the peace talks. The statement said the Special Envoy's suggestions to extend a formal invitation for Eritrea to join the ongoing AU-led effort shows an absence of recognition of Eritrea's invasion and disregarding for the plight of Tigrayan victims and survivors. For more, Abel Zagawu.
Global Society of Tigray Scholars issued a statement on Thursday saying it was dismayed by a call from the African Union Special Envoy for Eritrea to take part in negotiations. The statement called on the African Union to consider a replacement for the Special Envoy and said the continued presence of the former president in the position presents a serious obstacle for progress in the ongoing conflict. The statement said the Special Envoy's suggestion to extend a formal invitation to the state of Eritrea to join the ongoing AU-led efforts shows an absence of recognition of Eritrea's invasion and disregarding for the plight of Tigrayan victims and survivors. Eritrean forces have committed some of the most gruesome atrocities in the ongoing conflict, including the Axum and Mariam Denglet massacres, just two of many widely documented atrocities committed by Eritrean soldiers in Tigray. The society also criticized the persistent framing of the negotiations as being between the government of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, saying this indicated an inherent bias in the AU-led effort, noting that the people of Tigray are currently represented by an elected government and political leaders, not by a political party. The statement also noted a failure by the Special Envoy to recognize unilateral confidence-building measures taken by the government of Tigray, including the release of thousands of Poles, while it praised the Ethiopian government's State National Dialogue Commission, which excludes all factors that are opposed to Abiy's regime. The statement strongly condemned the AU's briefing note for echoing allegations by Ethiopian government about elements of TPLF being in Sudanese territories, without any regard to implication of this for another sovereign state and compromising the safety and security of more than 70,000 Tigrayan refugees in Sudan. The society called on the AU to avoid historical failure that will leave a lasting stain on the history of the continental organization for generations to come and work towards ensuring peace, justice, and accountability on the ongoing conflict.
The president of Tigray and other high-level officials held talks with the UN's International Commission of Human Rights experts yesterday. We had a brief stay with the commissioner for the inquiry on the Tigray genocide, Yamana Zarai, that he said that the government has made it clear to the commissioners that it cannot accept as being credible an investigation that is conducted remotely. For more, let's take a look.
The government of Tigray has clearly opposed the remotely done investigation. Such complicated crimes cannot be remotely done. Such complicated crimes cannot be done by samples, very few samples. Pilot study of investigation for Tigray cannot work because it is the whole Tigray, the whole Tigrayans, all institutions, whether they are Tigrayans or not, have suffered these things. So they have to come here, see what really has happened, see the feeling of the people, because the people still is suffering by the siege and encirclement-based genocidal actions of the different actors that we are mentioning. Still there are territories in western, northwest, and central and eastern part of Tigray occupied by enemy forces. The enemies are still continuing their crimes, and they are trying to destroy evidences, even in western part of Tigray. They are burning corpses. So such concerns are raised, and the government of Tigray has called upon the commission to do its activities based on the principles of promptness, independency, impartiality, and quality-based ones. Otherwise, it has also assured the Commission that the government and its Commission of Inquiry on Tigray Genocide, is ready to cooperate for everything that they want. If they come here, it will be so fine. If not, we can easily provide them what we have at hand. As we all know, and as I have said earlier, the atrocities in Tigray are of international nature. They are international atrocities, international crimes. Because they are international crimes, they have violated both international humanitarian laws and international humanitarian laws. If they are international crimes, if they are violating these international laws, that means the crimes are a concern of the international community too. The Tigray government, in its the different statements, was continuously expressing this, and in the meeting, the president has clearly put those standards that we are ready to allow, not only to allow, but to fully cooperate with the UN-based commission. We are working by our commission to have the truth, not less, not more. Know what has really happened and what really is happening. And we expect the commission to come here to make a full and comprehensive assessment and investigation.
The deliberate and systematic destruction of health facilities, coupled with more than 13 months long blockade of life-saving medication, vaccinations, and other medical supplies, has resulted in the steady rise of various infectious diseases that were previously on their way to being eradicated. Our reporter Salome Tigrai visited Eider Hospital and spoke to their top infectious disease expert that says war and displacement has made all communities more vulnerable to disease. Let's take a look.
Malaria is an infectious disease commonly transmitted by a bite from an infected Anopheles mosquito. For decades, Tigray's health system had focused primarily on the prevention of the disease, by providing mosquito nets and insect repellents to at-risk communities. However now, says Dr. Haile Gabremeskel, head of the Infectious Diseases Unit at Eider Comprehensive Specialized Hospital, the infectious disease is now spreading at a rapid rate.
The disease transmission or pattern in our setup is more of unstable transmission. It is year-round, but there are seasons during which there is a peak of malaria cases, usually from September to December and around April and May, following the rainy seasons in the summer and also rainy seasons during March. Now, in the seasons that we are in the summer season, we are seeing more cases different from the previous pattern, where in general results in displacement of the vector. Every activity related to war, including digging of forts and mass movement of people. As we know, there are many internally displaced people, so the displacement, migration, climate change and deforestation, as well as destruction of the environment due to bombing also, results in destruction of the habitat of vectors, so displacement of the vector is there.
Dr. Haile also discussed the impacts of the high number of displaced persons from areas where malaria was highly prevalent, saying this would increase the risk for host communities where malaria was uncommon.
People who are not getting appropriate treatment for malaria, this will be the reservoir for malaria transmission, and to make it worse, like we have people living in IDP settlement sites. These are people who were displaced from the western part of Tigray. So we see cases from this IDP settlement sites with cases of P. vivax, Plasmodium vivax malaria. They have relapses of this disease, and they didn't get appropriate eradication therapy with Primaquine. So these are the reservoir, and they will result in transmission of the disease in the community. So even if we don't see malaria commonly in Mekelle, the mass displacement have resulted in possible transmission of malaria, because the fact that there is mosquito does not mean there will be malaria. There should be also a source or a potential reservoir, and currently the failed vector control strategies and the presence of potential sources and lack of treatment has resulted in increased incidence of malaria.
Leishmaniasis, another infectious disease spread through insects, has started to spread at a rapid pace in areas previously uncommon, while the lack of anti-leishmaniasis medication is forcing many to go on without them.
In our setup, usually the transmission is from infected humanus to uninfected humanus by the sandfly vector bite, and these untreated cases are the reservoirs for the leishmania organism, which are resulting in more transmission. So the presence of many untreated cases, cutaneous as well as visceral, and the spread of the vector from usual habitat is resulting in more cases of visceral leishmaniasis and also the cutaneous form.
Dr. Haile stresses that Tigray's health system, crippled by the ongoing siege and the deliberate destruction of its infrastructures, will need the assistance of all concerned bodies to curb the spread of infectious diseases.
In Aider Hospital specifically, we are encountering huge challenges with regard to infectious diseases care. We have lack of antibiotics, basic supplies, and we are being challenged by epidemic-prone diseases, zoonotic diseases, and as I have said, malaria and DVL. And we have lack of appropriate medications, and I kindly request all concerned bodies and the Minister of Health, Ethiopian Minister of Health, and WHO and other NGOs to support us supplying the appropriate medications and supplies.
Pediatric hydrocephalus has been prevalent in Tigray since before the war, with up to 54% of pregnant mothers being diagnosed with folic acid deficiency, one of the main causes for the disease. According to studies, 96% of these cases are preventable through folic acid supplementation and through surgical operation following birth. But today, well over a year since the start of the siege, doctors tell us they simply have no supplies by which to treat the disease and are being forced to send infants and families back home without any care. For more, Sarah Kalali.
These are Gersh and Elsa, a young couple from Qolla Tembe, central Tigray. We found them at Ida Referral Hospital in Maqala, seeking treatment for their 1-month-old daughter. Their daughter has been diagnosed with hydrocephalus. Hydrocephalus is a common pediatric neurosurgical condition. It is a condition in which there is a buildup of cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. This fluid surrounds the brain and the spinal cord and cushions and supports them. When there is a buildup of this fluid due to blockage, problem with absorption, or overproduction of the fluid, it puts pressure on the brain, causing it to enlarge. Doctors have informed Gersh and Elsa that their daughter's condition has developed to such a degree that she will need a surgical operation. Impossible due to the siege on the region that has depleted all medical supplies.
I came from Ola Tembin. The health facility at Adi referred us to Ida Hospital. They told us she had complications related to her back and that she would need surgery. When we came here, the doctors told us there was no medication. They told us there was a tube that needed to be inserted, but that they don't have it. They told us to wait because there had been others that had come here before us. We are simply waiting.
According to experts at Eider Specialized Hospital, the condition has been prevalent in Tigray since even before the start of the war, with up to 54% of pregnant mothers being diagnosed with folic acid deficiency, one of the main causes for the disease. Dr. Hafto Haile, a pediatrician at Eider Hospital, says cases of hydrocephalus have been relatively high in Tigray. What has changed now is the capacity of the health system to take measures to treat the disease.
Especially in our case, which is epidemic and very prevalent. This I can tell you from the previous studies that was conducted in our setup. So in that study, the neuralative defects, the prevalence was 131 from 10,000 birds, including stillbirds and live birds. The prevalence of neuralative acid defects is increasing definitely in our community, generally in Tigray, we can say, because one is we are not doing the preventing measurements like folic acid supplementation during the early ANC follow-up or we don't have also the current health facilities that would support for the planned pregnancy. So if we have planned pregnancy, if mothers have planned pregnancy, they will take the folic acid, then we can't prevent significantly.
We spoke to Dr. Mehret Abhaila, a neurosurgeon at Idar Hospital. He says approximately 10 children are brought in with the condition every week to the hospital, but due to the lack of medical supplies necessary for surgical operation, specifically a tube called a VP shunt necessary to drain the cerebrospinal fluid, they are simply being forced to send mothers back home.
In Idar Referral Hospital Neurosurgery department, we have 2 clinics in a week, twice. So in every clinic almost at least 5 kids come to our clinic. What we do is we just counsel them. Previously, before the advent of the war, we had these patients. They were coming, they were being provided to us for free with donation, and without any payment, these children with hydrocephalus were being treated. And but now there is no way in to Tigray. There is no way to bring this material. So what we are telling them in practically is just we are not currently doing these procedures and just to go back home. And it's very difficult practically counseling mothers, and there is no way to treat this kid. It's very difficult, but that's what we are doing. And almost like 10 kids, the minimum 10 kids per week, we are sending them back home without any management.
The cases will be increased, but we are not managing. So we are losing many neonates and like children from this most treatable entity. So this is happening in our setup. The other is also even the number also could be increased because they are not also coming to our setup. One, they know that we are not treating such cases, and the other is they have also the difficulty with transportation and with banking also and other services, telecommunication. So we are not assessing all the cases.
Hydrocephalus is just one of the many illnesses that Tigray's health system is no longer equipped to treat, leaving families like Gorosh and Elsa helpless and desperate for assistance as the siege continues to deplete what little supplies are left in Tigray.
Tens of thousands of women in Tigray have been subjected to rape, gang rape, and sexual slavery by the Allied forces with the intention of terrorizing and annihilating the community. We want to introduce you to Burhan, a single mother to 2 children, still suffering from the physical and psychological scars of being raped by 5 Eritrean soldiers in a military camp in the town of Shirandaslashe. Sablor Klama reports.
ኣብ ቤተ ክርስቲያን ጸሪሕ ንገዛይ ይመለስ ነይረ ካብ ሰዓት 1 ይዝኸውን ገና ኣይመሰየን ዝኾነ ይኹን ሰብ
I was at church. I was walking back home. It was around 7 p.m. It wasn't dark yet. There were still people out. I was just 10 minutes away from home when 5 Eritrean soldiers caught up with me. One of them told me to stop and asked where I was coming from. He told me I wasn't allowed to move at that hour due to the curfew. I told him he was right, but that I was at a prayer ceremony that took longer than expected. I had nothing on me except my natsala and cell phone. He told me to wait and called the others.
For 3 consecutive days, Burhan, a resident of Shirandaslashe and a single mother of 2 children, would be held without food or drinking water.
ድሕሪ 5 ደቂቃ ፓትሮል ናይ ወታደራዊ መኪና እያ ናብ ቅድመይ መጽያ ጠጠው ኢላ
5 minutes later, a military vehicle came to take me to a military camp where many soldiers were stationed. I was so afraid. I thought they were going to kill me. They had done that to many others like me. They didn't give me any food or water in the 3 days they kept me there. I thought to myself why they were so stingy that they couldn't spare 1 bullet to kill me. It's difficult to describe really. They wouldn't even let me out to use the bathroom, so I had to use the small room to urinate, so it smelled terrible. And sometimes I would become hungry to a point that I would lose consciousness.
حانت ጥይት ደምሲኢኖም ለይ ክሳዕ ዝብል ኮይነና ከቢድ ነይሩ ነው ተዛረው ብጣዕሚ ከቢድ ዘግናኒ
After 3 days of imprisonment and the denial of food and water, one night, the soldiers would drag Burhan out of her cell and start accusing her of supporting the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Burhan explained again that she had been walking home from church the day they found her, and that she was not part of any political movement, but the soldiers she explained to would not listen.
ኣብ ሳልሳይ መዓልቲ ምሸት ሰዓት ከባቢ ክልተ ዝኸውን ጽዋዕያታ ውሽጥ ዘላ ኩሉ ሰሚዐዮ
On the third day, at around 8 p.m., I heard one of the soldiers say, "Call that woman." I could see them only because they had brought torches with them. They took me to the wilderness and accused me of being a supporter of the TPLF, and said that that was why I was walking on the streets past the curfew. They took me to the wilderness in the dark and told me to lie down. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. Then he said it again and then just kicked me to the ground and I fell on my right side of my face. Each of them took turns raping me. There was 5 of them. I lost consciousness because I was so hungry. Everything was beyond what I could bear. I was thirsty. I simply didn't have the energy to scream.
But the struggle for women and girls like Burhan does not end here. Many survivors of sexual violence in Tigray have found it almost impossible to access healthcare and are carrying on with the psychological and physical wounds of their attack.
There was an odorous fluid coming out of my uterus. I had hypotension and I was constantly falling. I bled heavily for 9 months, non-stop. I didn't go to a health facility because they had all been looted. They had nothing left. Why would I go there? There was no healthcare service. If I had went, they would have asked me why I came and killed me if I had dared to tell the truth. I came here to Maqala after a year, hoping to get treatment.
Burhan had high hopes for the future before the start of the war. She says she was a single mother, but she had the means to care for her 2 children with her income from her teaching job. Burhan was a loving and caring mother, but had to leave her children behind to receive medical treatment here in Maqala.
I felt so depressed. I didn't know what to tell my daughters about where I was going. So I didn't say anything. They don't know where I am. I haven't seen them for a year. What can I take with me? I'm so afraid of going back. I have no means of sustaining myself. There are no salaries anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Tens of thousands of women and girls across Tigray have been subjected to the same type of violence that Burhan had faced, but their suffering has been prolonged and exasperated by the ongoing siege.
ኣብ ጽሜትን ኣብ ጽምን ኣብ ሕማምን ስለዘለና ብጽሕልና ክብል ይደሊ ህይወትና ትርፉና ህይወትና ድሕኑና ክብል ይደሊ በዘጋጣሚ እዚ
We are hungry, thirsty, and sick. Someone needs to intervene to save our lives. Help us. We are separated from our families. I can't see my children. They are all I have. I have been separated from my children. I'm alive and want to see them, but can't.
That's it for this edition. Thanks for your company. Bye for now.